Now, I was in the market for a new car trailer that was a little bit longer, could carry a little bit more weight, and this is what I found. I went out and I found the cheapest brand new trailer on Marketplace that I could find, and I got what I paid for. I gotta fix it before I can use it. I drove about an hour out to pick it up, and I didn't even make it home before I had my first problem. There's a lot of people out there that don't think lights on a trailer are that important. As long as you can see my taillights. Well, that's not really a thing. If they don't work, that's a problem. On my journey home, I lost my turn signals, started blowing fuses in the truck, didn't even make it, and I was winging it from there. Luckily, I was on all country back roads, not a whole lot of traffic, made it home, and here we are. Got the deck off already, well, parts of it, and we've got a lot of work to do to get this so it's reliable, so you can just hook up to it, plug it in, and you know it's going to work. So what I ended up getting, this is a 10,000 pound gross weight, 18 foot plus 2 foot dovetail, fold down ramps. You know, not a bad deal. It's got nice features, spare mount, you know, winch mount, a toolbox on the front that's way too small for anything you'd put into it. You know, it's not bad, but I had light problems right from the get-go. The brakes are incredibly out of adjustment and barely work. The wheel bearings, the hubs were hot by the time I got home. You know, they shouldn't be hot pulling it empty at 50 miles an hour. It just shouldn't happen that way. You know, tires are underinflated. Lug nuts weren't even tight. Now, the tires and the lug nuts, that's not uncommon. When you buy these trailers, or I should say, when the dealer buys these trailers, they buy a stack of them. They come stacked 5 feet, 5 tall, you know, 13.6 high as they can get them. Get the most out of their load. The wheels aren't on them. They're on the deck. Another trailer is sitting on them. That's how they space them out. That's how it works. I get it. The dealer comes through and they just start zinging lug nuts on. Well, it's not tight. You know, the last new trailer I bought, there were 20 PSI in the tires because they don't check that. That's your responsibility. And the lug nuts, well, a couple of them I pulled off with my hand. Well, I know better, but I went and picked this up without a torque wrench with me or any wrenches at all. And luckily I made it back, but you know, first thing I did was put a torque wrench on them, and yeah, they're loose. You'll have that. All right, let's start up at the front here. You know, 2 5/16 ball. Basically, you need that size ball for anything over 7,000 gross vehicle weight. All of my trailers are this size. I like to make everything universal. I don't want to carry 3 different hitches with me. So everything I've got is 2 5/16. And that's not to say I've got 2 trailers. I think I own 7 trailers. Far more trailers than one person needs to own privately. But here we are. You know, safety chains, those are decent. I've seen worse. You know, they at least have the forged hook on them. You got your breakaway cable if you're into that sort of thing. Personally, just hook it up right, you won't ever need it. Plug, you know, this is terrible. You know, just some loom over some basically individual wires that'll rot off as soon as they get wet. You know, this trailer wiring that's stuck together right here, that just doesn't last. You know, it gets cold and brittle. You know, first cold winter, it'll be terrible. It'll break right off, corrode, all of it. We'll be able to reuse the plug because that's just a generic splice-on plug. But all of that wiring is going to get redone. Got a drop leg jack. That means the bottom half will unpin and lower. You can pin it again and then lower your jack, so you're not having to crank it down on blocks the whole time. I don't love top line jacks, but you know, it seems to be what everything comes with. They're the most universal. We got this tiny little toolbox. You know, it's basically sheet metal. I think the floor pans in my truck are thicker, so that'll rot out the first winter. Where I'm at, as in my state, they salt the hell out of the roads. Moving on, winch mount. You know, they got a hole in the front already for the fair lead cable to go through. That's not so bad. We'll try it out. We'll see how much it bends up. I imagine it will, and then we'll fix it, you know. Breakaway box. You know, surprisingly enough, you'd think they'd put a breakaway box on here and put a battery in it, but they didn't. So that wasn't going to work anyway. As far as the deck goes, it was there, basically free floats. They had like 5 screws across the front with this, you know, piece of flat stock. You know, they spent the time to countersink, but they didn't spend the time to paint the underside, so it started to rust immediately. You know, then they had another line of screws here, 1 in each board, another line of screws here, 1 in each board, and nothing under the back because it goes under a lip. That's not enough. You'd be surprised if you screw your deck down every cross member, or every other cross member even, how much stiffer the trailer will get, how much nicer the boards will lay over time, because this is treated wood, hopefully, and it'll warp. It'll warp as it gets wet and dries out and wet and dries out. It'll start popping up, doing all sorts of crazy things. So I will be ordering more screws to get that fastened down further, and I may not even put this front piece back on. It really serves no purpose. You know, they probably could have used a pile of screws across the front and been cheaper than that piece of metal, because metal ain't cheap. You got nice D-rings on here. Unfortunately, up here, you know, this is 3/16, but you know, you put a load binder on there and it's just going to bend the crap out of those front corners. So we might cut those off and move them down here to the actual C-channel. As far as wiring, you know, comes back, it's all in this, you know, a commercial conduit that's welded to the frame. Put these little bushings on the ends so nothing chafes. Well, that would probably last 1 year, maybe. But everywhere's got these Scotch locks on it. And by everywhere, I mean everywhere. There is, you know, a whole pile of them there. Wires go back in the tube again, back to the axles, you know, pile of them there, pile of them back there for that rear axle. And then it just gets worse. Go right back to the tail lights. I mean, what do we got? 5 of them there. Lights come over. And down here, holy cow. I don't know if you can see that under there. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. And you got your 3 lights in the middle, you know, more Scotch locks, another 6 of them there. And then you come over to where I had my problem. So I was just riding along and I noticed that my turn signal started to flash fast, which usually means you either blew a light bulb or you know, blew a fuse. Well, it turns out I blew a fuse. Blew my left turn signal, so that'd be the yellow wire. This yellow wire's got nothing on it, but because of the Scotch lock, it still has power coming all the way through, and it's just dead end there. You got copper sticking out. Here's another one. They didn't even fold that one over. You know, the wire end sitting out there live. You know, this end That's the ground, but it's squished. You know, a couple more there. Got a hole. This looks like a dang Christmas tree almost. You know, there's 6 of them there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to rewire the whole trailer, and not going to use this chintzy trailer wiring. Not going to use that, you know, split loom on the front, because as soon as that gets pinched, you're fixing it. So what I've got, this is something I had laying around. You know, this is all 7 wires, yeah, all jacketed, you know, heavily protected. This is actually a light cord from a semi truck. It goes from the truck to the trailer. I've got a few old ones laying around. So cut the ends off, we're going to use that. I'm going to use the plug that's on the trailer now. I'll put it on there, run it in this junction box, and then we'll mount that under the front of the trailer so that all of the rest of the trailer wiring can mount right in this box. And what that'll do is that'll give us a place to, if we do have in the future have issues, see if I can get this open, we can just, you know, undo one wire if we got a short we're trying to track down, or if we've got to redo something, we don't have to start cutting splices out. We can just unscrew it and then put a new ring terminal on, set it back up, because all of our wires will come out from there. Instead of having the cheap trailer wire, we're going to go to this. This is a jacketed 4 wire. Got all four wires in there, ground, tail lights, left turn, right turn. So that'll get us from the junction box at the front all the way to the back. And I still will put this in the conduit that's welded to the frame. But now you might be wondering, what about brakes? There's no brake wire in that 4 wire loomed wire. So we'll get another loomed wire. This is a 2 wire jacketed wire, and I believe this is 14 gauge. I don't know, what does it say on here? Yeah, 14.2.